Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 19th of December of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. So we have a lot of updates. Of course, the most important updates are coming from the territory of the Russian Federation, where the President of Russia made lots of very important statements during the year in a review conference. The President of Russia spoke about Ukraine, about the situation on the ground. He was talking about the shadow fleet, he was talking about Ukraine attacks, he was talking about the peaceful settlement of the conflict, he was talking about Europeans. So he covered most of the questions and his statements were very strong. Furthermore, we see that the President of the Russian Federation is very angry. Probably he supposed that the special military operation and the war in Ukraine would be finished by the end of 2025. Most likely this is something that the United States of America promised the Russians during the summits on the territory of Alaska, but now we see that this is not the reality. This is not going to happen. This war will continue in 2026. Today the Europeans allocated or promised Ukraine for another 90 billion euros, and this money will be transferred to Ukraine during 2026 and 2027 to support Ukraine. So the war will continue. So that is why the Russians understand that they need to change tactics. They will not continue the special military operation probably along the current line of combat contact, because the Russians, of course the Russians understand this, they're moving too slow. They're moving too slow, and there are still lots of job to do according to their understanding of the goals of the special military operation. So that is why we believe that not just the Russians, of course, but both the Russians and the Ukrainians will change tactics for 2026, because probably the 2026 is going to be the decisive year for the entire special military operation and for the security situation in Europe. So let's discuss everything, and first let's talk about Ukrainians and what Ukrainians are planning to do in 2026. Today we got a very interesting video published by Ukrainian sources, and here we can see another Russian vessel, another Russian commercial tanker that was transferring oil from the territory of the Russian Federation, probably in the direction of India or maybe somewhere else. And this video we can see how Ukrainians, at least the author of this video, claims that these attacks were carried out by Ukrainians, by Ukrainian special forces. We can see how Ukrainians were bombing and attacking this vessel, this commercial tanker, and the sources are saying that the tanker was damaged, and currently the status of the tanker is critical. So we don't know for sure. We don't have the current, let's say the fresh pictures of the tankers of the tanker to understand what kind of damage the special forces managed to deal. Another pro-Ukrainian source today, very reliable one, stated today that there was a high-ranked Russian military official on the territory of this tanker, and the Ukrainians are saying that there was a person who was responsible for all special operations through the world when talking about vessels, tankers, and so on. And Ukrainians are telling us that as a result of this attack, at least this person was wounded. And the sources are saying that this person has connections and is in very good relations with the president of the Russian Federation, Putin. And some sources are saying that Putin personally gives him some orders and tasks to carry out some operation through the world. So this is the situation, and this is exactly what the Ukrainians are going to do the next year. Obviously, the Ukrainians understand that the United States of America and the Western countries will not be able to hold the prices for oil for a very long period of time on this level. And the Americans and the Europeans and the Ukrainians understand that most likely the next year the price for oil will start growing once again. Especially the price for oil will start growing if something happens on the territory of Venezuela. And this something might happen in coming days or maybe even hours. So that is why the Ukrainians realize that the only way to reduce the Russian incomes from trade with oil is to destroy the shadow fleet. So according to my raw estimations, it seems that this is the 5th or the 6th or even the 7th vessel or tanker of the armored force of Russian Federation that has been destroyed since the beginning of the moment when the Ukrainians began attacking vessels through the world, basically on the territory of the Black Sea. So of course, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously the Russians will strike back. Obviously, this is going to happen within hours. When talking about the Russians, as we discussed a minute ago, they understand that they're moving very slowly along the line of combat contact. Yes, during the next year, if they continue their offensive operation through this current line when they were at the offensive operation in 2022, 2023, and 2024 and 2025, if they continue doing the same along this line, obviously they will be able to get results, but obviously these are not the results that the President of the Russian Federation is waiting for. So that is why we believe that, due to the fact that 2026 is going to be a decisive year for both the Russians and the Ukrainians, we believe that Russians will change their tactics, and at least updates that we are receiving, that we've received during the day, tell us that Russians are planning something special for Odessa region. So the Russians began their, let's say, special operation in the territory of Odessa region several days ago, and the Russians started this special operation with attacks on energy sector, energy infrastructural objects through the entire Odessa region, and these attacks started around 11th, 12th or 13th of December of 2025. If you remember, we had an article, we had a post, this one, and let's discuss this video once again. We've discussed this video already, but the pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that during that night attack, the Russians managed to destroy up to 20 substations through the entire Odessa region, and starting from that moment, the blackout occurred in this area. So obviously the civilians began leaving this territory due to complete impossibility to live there, and when the Russians dealt critical damage to the Ukrainian energy infrastructure, the Russians continue bombing and attacking this region every day. But the Russians began bombing not just the energy infrastructural objects, the Russians began bombing the logistic. And on the 14th of December of 2025, we received a first report that Russians began bombing and attacking the Zatoka bridge, one of the most important bridges through the entire territory of Ukraine, because you know that Ukraine still have possibilities to receive supply and support from the NATO countries and through the Black Sea. And in this video we can see how Russians were attacking this Zatoka bridge with drones from this angle. So once again, what is the importance of this part of Ukraine, the most southwestern part? This part has a common border with the NATO country, with NATO. We're talking about Romania. This part of Ukraine has connections, has border with Moldova, and this part of Ukraine has access to the Black Sea, and this part of Ukraine has a very well developed port infrastructure that allows Ukraine to receive weapons, arms, supply and support through the sea, through the Black Sea. So that is why the Russians began attacking this bridge, because Russians understand that this is one of the most important bridges in this area, and this is the only railway bridge that goes from the territory, let's say, of the NATO country, towards the mainland. So basically, if Russians are able to destroy this bridge, obviously this will lead to huge problems in Ukraine's logistics in this area. On the 15th of December, we received a bigger video of Russian attacks in this area. So here we can see lots of explosions. We have already discussed this video once again. Up to 15 strikes the Russians carry out on the Zatoka bridge. The bridge wasn't destroyed, it was damaged. The Ukrainians haven't stopped any traffic through this area, which means that the bridge still malfunctioning. But this bridge wasn't the only bridge that was attacked by Russians. During the same days, the Russians attacked the bridge in the area of the settlement by the name of Sarata. So we have already discussed this video once again, but let's discuss this to understand the entire picture of what exactly is happening here. So here we can see the Russian drone, a Russian Geran drone that attacked the bridge, and that wasn't the only drone that attacked this bridge during those days. So we are watching this video once again to understand what the Russians are doing. And today and yesterday and today we received lots of updates from the territory of Odessa region, and we received lots of updates from the territory of the settlement by the name of Mayaki. So this is the video that was published this morning, and here we can see another Russian drone, and here we can see Ukraine attempts to bring down this drone with air defense forces, but as you can see, the Ukrainians haven't managed to do anything, and the drone attacked the bridge, and the bridge was pretty damaged. You know that since this video was published, and this video was published somewhere at 8, let's say, a.m. of the Ukrainian time on the 19th of December of 2025, so this morning, since that moment, at least 3 or 4 different updates were reported about the situation in this region. First of all, pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Russians struck this bridge 2 or 3 times just during the 19th of December. And right before we started making this video, we received 2 important updates. First one, the Russians attacked the bridge with Iskander missile, and the second report is that the Ukrainians stopped any traffic through this bridge, through this road, because this bridge is no longer the Ukrainians are no longer able to use this bridge for the logistical purpose, for any purposes. And also this evening, this video was published. Here we can see the consequences of Russian attacks. As you can see, the bridge was pretty damaged. We can see big holes through the bridge, which means that the Russians managed to deal significant damage. And the sources are saying that this video was published before the Russians attacked the bridge with Iskander missile. So which means that the situation right now is much worse, even with the current situation that you can see right now in front of your screens. So if the Russians did attack the bridge with Iskander missile, we believe that the bridge has been already destroyed. So which means that Ukrainians currently have just one possibility to communicate between the southwestern part of Odessa region and the main part of Odessa and the main part of Ukraine, just through the Zatoka bridge, through this area. If Russians destroy this bridge in coming days, this will lead to the situation when the entire southwestern part of the Odessa region would be completely cut from the mainland. And now the most important question, what the Russians are doing this, why the Russians are doing this, and what things the Russians are trying to show us. First of all, of course, from this perspective, when the southwestern part of Ukraine, of Odessa region is being cut off from the mainland, we can say that this is a perfect situation for Russians to carry out a landing operation. So the Russians, of course, everybody understand, of course, this is going to be a very expensive operation when talking about losses, but from this perspective, this operation can become very, very possible. The Russians can land infantry on the territory of the southwestern part of Odessa region. The Russians will not attack the city, they will just try to take under complete control this territory. The Russians will take under control the entire port infrastructure, and of course this will lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian sea traffic. They will not be able to trade anymore, and of course from this perspective the Ukrainians would be forced to do something with this. They will be forced to take additional forces and so on. Of course, you may ask how the Russians are going to supply their forces here. Once again, they have Transnistria very near to this territory, and according to information we have, according to the main intelligence of the directorate, the Russians have already begun establishing different facilities and plants and factories through the entire Transnistria, where Russians produce drones, FPV drones first of all, and the Russians began recruiting process with the purpose to recruit as many as possible locals and civilians for this purpose, for military purposes. So as of now, we don't know for sure the exact number of Russians, of their manpower, of their possibilities. We're talking about manpower, but it seems that the Russians have enough of resources. But from another side, from another point of view, if Russians are able to destroy these 2 bridges, this can lead to another important and interesting situation. So the destruction of the bridges will create the situation that the Russians have let's say that that this offensive operation from the Russian side will have very high chances, and this possibility, these high chances, can force the Western countries to deploy their troops in this part of the Odessa region. So, for example, France can be forced to deploy their forces there because Romania will not do this. The United Kingdom can be forced with this situation to deploy forces and troops on the southwestern part of Odessa region. And this is exactly what the Russians probably want. This is another very good scenario for them because this will involve, let's say, some of the European countries into direct conflict with the Russian Federation. So two options are possible for the Odessa region. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. As of now, it's just speculation, but everything is possible, and I understand that right now everything is possible with Odessa. And of course, if Russians are going to change their tactics, and if the Russians are planning to finish the special military operation, of course, most likely there's something on the area of Odessa, in the area of Odessa might happen in coming days, weeks, or months. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Pokrovsk. During the previous 12 hours, the map has been adjusted. As you can see, we have completely colored the settlement of Mirnograd as a gray zone. During the previous 24 hours, we received a report that Russians managed to establish complete control over the city, and first pro-Russian sources began adjusting their maps in this area. So we colored this territory as a gray zone, and we expected, and lots of sources expected, that today during the Putin speech, during the let's say summary year forum in Moscow, the Russian sources will announce complete control over the settlement, but this didn't happen. We believe that the Russians decided not to announce about the city of Mirnograd because, if you remember, we discussed that currently the Ukrainians are concentrating their forces on the line between Slaviansk and Sergeyevka with the purpose to carry out a counter-offensive operation. So that is why we believe that the Russians decided just to stay on the safe side, because they don't know whether the Ukrainians are able to carry out successful counter-offensive or not. And if they can carry out a successful counter-attack, of course, the Russians don't want to be in the situation when they announce complete control over the city of Mirnograd, and the next day Ukrainians publish videos with Ukrainians flags through the entire city because they managed to counter-attack and to restore control. So the Russians basically don't want to repeat the situation that we can see right now in the area of the city of Kupiansk, where Russians probably have problems. According to information we have, Ukrainians continue their counter-offensive operation, and today, as you can see, the map has been adjusted based on the reports and based on videos that were published by pro-Ukrainian, pro-Russian sources. In this video, we can see how a Russian FPV drone operator attacked positions of the armored forces of Ukraine in this area. This building was attacked, which means that there are Ukrainians there. So that is why, based on this video, we have adjusted the map. We colored this northern and the northwestern parts of the settlement of Kupiansk and the complete control of the armored forces of Ukraine. Furthermore, according to videos we received during the day, the Ukrainians continue sending more and more troops and forces in the direction of the city of Kupiansk with the purpose to reinforce Ukrainian positions. The Russians try to ambush Ukrainians and attack their vehicles through the entire Kupiansk direction. We have lots of videos of how Russians were attacking vehicles that were moving towards the city and so on. So as you can see, the situation is quite complicated, and Ukrainians try to support this level of offensive operation, this pace of offensive operation, because during the upcoming weekend a very important meeting is going to take place on the territory of the United States of America in Miami. The sources are saying that the Ukrainian delegation, the Russian delegation, the European Union delegation are traveling toward in the direction of Miami with the purpose to have talks this weekend. Most likely they are going to talk about the peaceful settlement process. So that is why Ukrainians are trying to support this pace of counter-offensive operation with the purpose to have stronger cards. And obviously, due to the situation, the Russians want to have stronger cards as well by creating the current situation on the territory of Odessa. So this is the situation. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.